Welcome to a review for your Unit 3 reading test this week. I'm going to use the copy of the test itself, like you will be using and writing on for the test this week. And I'm also going to be referencing the rubric, so we'll be going back and forth among those. I will use Terrible Things as our example text to show you kind of how to do this, okay? Section 1, annotate the story. Okay, you will be given a copy of a story. You will read it, and as you read, you will annotate. Remember, annotating is showing what you notice, so underline or highlight, and then writing an explanation of why you notice. As you read, your annotation should show comprehension so that you understand. It shows understanding, critical thinking, that you are trying to figure out what's going on, maybe what character motives are, maybe making some inferences or predictions, and analysis. Then you should also, again, make inferences about characters, conflict, and story elements. So I, in Terrible Things, might point out, if I were annotating the story, the section where Little Rabbit starts to ask questions. I might say, he's the only one so far asking questions about why this is happening. So that would, and then I might make an inference and say, it seems like the other animals don't recognize the danger that he does. So that would be a good annotation. And let's see over here, did it show comprehension, critical thinking, analysis, and make inferences about characters? So when I say characters, conflicts, and story elements, if you make more annotations about one of these three than the others, that's okay. Just show your thinking. So those are your two categories about annotations. Next, setting. The when and where is what we always say about setting, but really, what's the setup? What is the situation that's being set up for this story to occur, where and when? So in Terrible Things, it's in a clearing in the meadow where all the animals live. And so that's pretty simple. So then I would have to then take to number 3, explain how it influences the conflict, characters, theme, and or plot. That's a lot. That's a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4 things. Okay. My advice to you is, if you look at the rubric, if you want to meet the expectations, choose one of those things. If you want to exceed the expectations, explain 2 or more of those things. And what does it mean when it says, how does the setting influence? That means, how does the setting play a part? What does the setting have to do with the conflict? How does it help make it happen? So the conflict is that in this situation, I'm going to say it's character versus character, really. Terrible things are coming in, right? So I would say perhaps that the setting influences the conflict because an otherwise peaceful part of the forest is invaded by a violent aggressor. And so that is where the conflict happens because it's peaceful. And then how about the characters? Well, the characters live together in the clearing and they seem to be harmonious until the terrible things come. You cannot answer a question about the theme until you have written a theme statement. So if you decide to choose this option, you're going to need to go down to the last question of the story and answer that first before you come back and address theme in this part. And then how does the setting influence the plot? I think you could probably figure out some of that. So make sure that you answer it thoroughly and check the rubric to make sure you're doing it like you want to do it. Who's the protagonist? Who's the main character? That's basically all that is. But when you choose the protagonist, then you need to say 2 character traits and provide text evidence. So if I chose the protagonist as the little white rabbit, I would say one character trait would be that he was curious. How do I know that? He kept asking questions. So here I would put in quotation marks to answer and give text evidence some of the questions he asked, and then I would put the page number beside it. But look, it says 2 character traits. So being curious is not enough. Maybe being wise or being brave, whatever I decided, I'm going to need to make sure I have 2 and back them both with text evidence. Okay. And over here, character traits, look at this category, protagonist and antagonist, all in one category. So on the test, there's the protagonist. What you did with it, you're going to do the same thing with the antagonist. And in terrible things, the antagonists are the terrible things. So it's a group. So, but it's an invader. So I would say, what are characteristics of the terrible things? Number 1, ruthless. They take everyone. And maybe power hungry. They don't care. So make sure you back it up with text evidence. Okay, the conflict section. You have headings that ask you to complete 2 types of conflicts. Identify 2 types of conflicts in the story. Explain the issue, what happens and who is involved. Is it internal or external? And how does it impact the story? 4, terrible things. You could decide, is this character versus character or character versus supernatural? We don't know what the terrible things are. If you realize it's an allegory of the Holocaust, you might say it's character versus society. But whatever you choose, whatever the external force is, since I'm reading it literally, I'm going to say it's character versus character because the terrible things are coming after all the animals. So what happens and who is involved? It's character versus character because the forest animals are in conflict with terrible things when the terrible things invade. That would be an external conflict, which is character versus character. And how does it impact the story? Because the terrible things decide to invade and take things away, the entire peace, harmony, and actual survival of the animals are at risk. Okay? But it says 2. So you have to pick another one. What else? What other kind of conflict do we have? Maybe we have character versus character because the animals kind of did not stick together. They went against each other. And there was a moment when it was porcupines or rabbits. Which is it going to be? There wasn't a whole lot of action because of that. So if you find yourself like, well, maybe that's a conflict and you can't back it up, you probably need to find something else. So I see evidence of internal conflict with the little white rabbit. Why didn't we do this? I wish we had done that. He is struggling in his own mind about what happened. So I would choose that and fill out that as my second one. Okay. So conflict, major conflicts, what type and how each of them impacts the story. Next, cause and effect. Now listen carefully. This section, number 9, if you can go back and reference section 8 with the conflict, it'll make it probably a little easier to do. What is the conflict you identified here? Ask yourself, what was the cause of that conflict? Okay. Why were the terrible things and the animals in conflict? It seemed like the cause was that the terrible things wanted to take over the clearing. We don't know why, but that's exactly what happened. What's the effect? The effect is that one by one, the animals were taken away. How this impacted the plot of your story? It made the characters complain about each other and try to justify why they should be there. And it made almost all of them disappear. So choose what choose a conflict here. Ask yourself the cause of that conflict here. And that will be a good, easy way to get that done. Okay, last but not least, theme. Write a theme statement. We have done this over and over the last week or so. For terrible things, what do we learn? You already wrote a lot of those. And I think a good one may be when danger comes, you have a better chance of survival if you stick together. But then explain how you know this is a theme using evidence from the text. So write your theme statement and then explain how the story supports that. And again, there it is right here. So get ready. I think you're going to be fine. Look at the resources that are attached to this today's page and review. And then feel free to message me any questions, and we will have a quick review before you have to actually take the test.